Hello and welcome, everybody. Today we are going to talk to a very dear friend of mine, Christina, and I think the topic for today is going to be on the secret of effective interviewing, right? So Christina is an expert in that space, and I don't want to steal the thunder. So Christina, over to you if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Yeah, so I've started my career out in the staffing industry. I've been within the talent development area now, within program management, where we take early career talent and turn them into future leaders. So I've been in the talent acquisition field for about 10 years overall, working in different roles at different companies, mostly within the technology area, the technology industry I've been in most of those 10 years.
Interesting. Thank you, Christina. So we'll get started, and I have a list of questions here on the side, so you might see me look away a little bit. Please don't mind. But, let's start with this because you have, I'm sure, interviewed a lot of people. I've seen you be a very good mentor and coach to a lot of people that I have seen and met. So I've seen it with my own eyes. So let me ask you this, Christina, is how do you prepare for interviews? And if someone were to be preparing for an interview, what is your advice as an expert in this space to them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it really depends on their personal style and how they learn best, because you're basically studying, right? So you are studying your own accomplishments. So if someone was to ask me for advice on how to prepare, I would recommend they should write down all their accomplishments within the jobs that they'd like to speak about, and then start breaking those down by what are some questions that I may get. So depending on the role, right? So it could be something on supply chain or something finance, something strategy, program management, and so on. So start breaking those down by those categories so you know what type of answers you want to give for what type of questions, as well as aligning things like behavioral questions. So everything is going to go back to your accomplishments. So even those behavioral questions, tell me a time where you've worked with a difficult colleague and how did you overcome that, for example. You're going to go back and look at your accomplishments and probably remember at least one time that you have dealt with a coworker who was hard to handle and how you overcame that and how you had an accomplishment as well with that. So that's where I would start with. And then I think it's great to also find a trusted mentor that knows the work you've done and kind of review with them, because they're going to remind you of things that you may have forgotten, right? So especially when you work in so many different areas, all the accomplishments that you've had, you may start to forget some of those. So I would recommend reviewing that with a trusted mentor if you can. And then basically just giving yourself a pep talk before that interview and know that you're going to go in and be yourself and do your best, and that's all you can do, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah, and that's very wise words, Christina. I think I'm going to keep this in mind. In fact, the next time I interview, I hope it's not in a very long time, but actually, I hope it's a very long time since I have to interview after this. The more I think about it, but I'm actually going to come back and watch this video for some of the things that you just said. It's very, very interesting. So one of my other questions that I have in this list is around salary negotiation, right? So how does it work? Is it a good idea to ask the same company for during salary negotiation and stuff like that? And also, I guess there are different scenarios, when you negotiate for salaries, right? So it's the same company, same role, or, same company, different role, or it's a completely new company and, stuff like that. So given all of these different dynamics, what are your thoughts around salary negotiation, Christina?
Yeah, so I would say with going into salary negotiation, say a number that you are actually wanting, right? But also a number where you're okay if you go a little bit below that. And that's what most people say is go a little bit higher than what your baseline is. So if you know you can't take any lower than 150, maybe you're asking for 165 or so. So you have that room if you need to negotiate. Now, with most companies, they're going to have a job that's within a certain band level. And within that band level, you're going to have a window of what that recruiter can give you as a salary. So it's only in their hands so much. They can only control that so much. And I would say most internal recruiters want to give you as much as they can because they want you to accept the offer, right? So I think something that's misrepresented a lot is people think, oh, they're going to mess with me and try to give me a much lower number than what I deserve. I don't believe most companies do that. I do believe that they want to give you a fair number, but you go in that first conversation with the recruiter, they should be either telling you the salary range or you should be telling them what you're requesting, right? So if you're going in and saying, I'm requesting 160, they may come back and say, you know what, I'm not sure if this is the right role for you because we only go from, 145, 150. You may say, you know what, this is a role I'm very interested in, so I will take 150 as like my lowest offer. And then you can decide together if you'd like to move on. When it comes to being in the current company that you're at, it's a bit harder because they can only do certain increases. Usually they have some HR policies on that. So you can obviously always ask for more. That's what I say. It can't hurt to ask for more. So that would be my suggestion on that.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think that's some very good advice, Christina. And another thing that I'm going to keep in mind. So if my boss is watching, at least now he knows what my strategy is. So,
now they know.
Yes. Christina, another question that comes to mind is, we're recording this in September of 2021, and you and I have been discussing this, that we're in the middle of what is called the Great Resignation, right? So I think most companies are seeing attrition levels that are way higher than historical trends would suggest, and way higher than what the market also suggests, right? Because people are thinking, okay, you're just coming out of a global pandemic and you don't expect a lot of people to resign because of job security and stuff like that, but it's happening, right? So on that note, what would happen is, me as a candidate, I go outside, I look for a job, I get an offer and stuff like that, and I speak to my company, and my company makes a counter offer, right? So what's your opinion on counter offers? Meaning, should a candidate consider a counter offer? Should a candidate not consider a counter offer? And or is it depends? And in your mind, if it depends, then what are the different factors that influence something like this, Christina?
Yeah, so it absolutely depends on the situation. But I would say if you're at the point where you're giving your resignation, you're ready to go. So if they're giving you a counter offer while you're giving your resignation, I don't think it's a good idea to ever take that counter offer. And that reason being is you're leaving that company for a specific reason or multiple reasons. If you loved that company and really wanted to stay, it's very rare that you leave. Now, everyone has their own different personal situations. If someone's leaving because they need more money and that's the only reason why they're leaving, that would be slightly a different situation. But normally people are leaving for career growth, of course, more money at times, more, new experiences, a better culture. So I would say if you're at the point of getting your resignation already, it's time for you to probably move on and not take that counter offer. When taking a counter offer, you have to remember that those involved are going to remember that you tried to leave. So I wouldn't say your future looks very bright there, unfortunately, unless it's a trusted boss and they knew you were going to probably leave if you got another offer and they're able to do something like that. But when you're at the point of giving your resignation, I think you've already decided that you found a better place to go. And it's not just about the money usually.
That's very deep. You say that. I mean, it's gotten me thinking about certain things, and it's amazing you say that. So let me just prod you a little more on that, Christina. So there have been instances where, and these are friends of mine who kind of brought this up with me, where they say that. My boss tells me that this is my my market rate, right? So this is what the market would pay for my role, but I think it's a lot more. And so at that time, is it a good idea for me to go out there, even though I'm not looking to quit? But is it okay for me to go out there, find another job at a higher base salary, or at a higher salary, and then show it to my boss saying, see, I do have this offer, so can you match that? Is that even a good idea for folks to do? Or otherwise, what would a strategy be around to ensure that you get market rates?
Yeah, so you could definitely do your own market research on that and get some numbers. I wouldn't say go out and do the entire interviewing process just to prove your boss wrong. But instead bring that market research back to them and say, well, actually, with these responsibilities, this is what the salary looks like in this market. And usually it's especially unless you're at a very small company, usually it's not your boss's decision. Like they can push for it, they can try and help for it, but it's not always their decision. You have HR, finance, and leadership and all those that usually get involved with that. So I would say go out, get that market research and bring it back and show them, rather than going out and interviewing to prove a point.
Oh, I think that's an amazing point.
Is that what you're doing right now?
I'm thinking about it, Christina. So, no, but that's a very good point. I think instead of going through a job interview and, getting an offer and stuff like that and potentially burning bridges with another company, it might be just better to do market research. And apparently there are a lot of websites now that kind of tell you, okay, if you're in this specific location, in this specific, number of years of experience in this specific role, here's how much, potentially how much you can get paid. So I think that I do agree. I think that's a much better way to do this than putting in a lot of effort. And I think your approach is also more effective, and it's a lot less effort as well. I think market research and salaries are probably much quicker. So I think that's a brilliant point, Christina. So my last question for you, Christina, is around interviews, right? So historically, interviews have been question and answer, right? So I ask you a question, you answer. I ask you a second question, you answer. So it's been very very question and answer kind of format, where it's almost become like an exam, right? A high school exam or an exam someone would give at university or something like that, right? So that's how it used to be. But some of the best interviews I've had, right? So in my current company, a couple of previous companies as well, some of the best interviews I've had are conversations where it's two-way traffic. It's not one-way questions and the other way answers, right? It's more of conversation saying, okay, let me get to know you, you get to know me, and let's see where your strengths are, where you can probably need improvements and stuff like that. So do you have an opinion on this? In your opinion, is one better? And I guess a follow-up to that is, what would your advice be to interviewers and to companies on how could they do, what in your mind is the better style of interviewing? How could they do it?
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. I think conversational interviews are much less stressful for not only the candidate, but also the interviewer. A lot of the problems stem from companies having certain questions that need to be asked. Candidate needs to be ranked on that exact question, which is fine, but the interviewer at the company can definitely lead that conversation and make it a lot more relaxed. And tell me about a time you did this, and then have a conversation around that. And tell me about yourself. Like what do you enjoy doing at work? What do you enjoy doing personally? Like, do you have any hobbies? Have a conversation and connect with the person. Because what I've learned over the years is, especially right now, like you said, it's a crazy time that we're in. You want to be able to go and show your personality and not be a robot and just answer every question how you think it's supposed to be answered, right? So if you ask me the typical, I don't know, tell me a time that you achieved something and it was very challenging. Tell me about a challenge that you overcame. I could tell you, I worked with this person and overcame this. But instead I could tell them a much more exciting story where I had a huge event and I had all these fires to put out because of COVID. We were virtual, and you can see my expressions, you can see my personality come through, you can see my urgency come through. and see that, this is something that I really had passion around and I was trying to fix, rather than a robotic sort of answer. And it's hard. It's very hard when someone's interviewing you and you're trying to give them answers that you think they want to hear. I think also showing your personality, because one time someone told me, it was very wise, if they don't like you for your personality, then it's not the right place for you. And it's true. So if you go in there and act like how you think they want you to act and you get the position, it may not be the right culture for you. But if you go in and show your true personality, obviously professional, you can really make a difference in that decision, whether it's they don't want to be working with you or they absolutely do want to be working with you. So I think we can show our personality more nowadays and have conversations rather than just very robotic, like answers and questions.
And I think you bring up a very good point here, because as you were speaking, it kind of hit me that I do better in interviews where they make me feel more relaxed and it's not a very stressed environment. And I think a lot more of my strengths come out then, as against this very strict question answer dialogue format, right? So I do agree. So I think just to conclude this brilliant conversation, Christina, thank you. But I just want to get your final thoughts on your advice to candidates to interview better, and I would say also your advice to companies to what would your advice be to companies to make the candidate interviewing experience better?
And you're really putting me on the spot right now. I would say to the companies, it's easier, train your employees to interview well, to have those conversations, to make the candidate feel comfortable. Because if I leave an interview feeling uncomfortable, it's unlikely that I want to work for that person or work with that person in some format. So I think making sure that they're educated on how to make a candidate feel comfortable and welcome, and really just get to know them and give them more of that open forum for them to tell them about themselves. And then for the candidates themselves, I would say really go with your gut feelings on your interviews, and go in and be yourself, and don't worry about, does this person like me or not, right? So you go in, you know your skills, you know them better than anyone else. Go in confidently and show them who you are and shine through that way. And if it's not the right position for you, you're not going to get that position, and you'll eventually land where you're supposed to be. So you have to try to bring it back down and not get so stressed, because it's extremely stressful to be interviewing. It takes a lot out of you. So take care of yourself. Don't get burned out. Go and be yourself, and don't be too hard on yourself as well.
So, Christina, I think this was brilliant advice. I just want to say thank you for your time. I mean, it's been amazing, and I hope folks who are watching this video, they take away something very useful. At least I did, for sure. And I'm sure people who are watching or sometimes even listening to this, sometimes people just want to listen and not watch, but I hope it's useful to them as well.
I hope they're watching. They see our great smiles.
Yes.
Well, thanks for having me, Agnel.